Everyone. Today I am going to review how to open up a camera raw file and make just the basic adjustments to it. So if you could navigate your way to the files that I gave you on the jump drive, and I'd like you to open up dsc9086.nef, which is in Photos 2018 Sunsets, and then Long Pond Sunset 11, 17, 16. Now, if at any time during this video you can't, I'm going too fast for you to follow, just pause it and then replay the section that, if you don't understand a particular section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the icon of the image. I'm going to say Open in Adobe Photoshop CC. And if you recall, the image will initially open up in the Adobe Camera Raw window, and here is where we're going to make our initial adjustments. And as you can see again from this image, it's a very high contrast image. So the first thing that we're going to do is recover some of the shadows in the foreground by sliding the shadows slider to the right. And as you can see, that does an amazing job of bringing back all of that detail in the foreground. Now, the sunset itself is a little bit overexposed, so we're going to darken down or recover some of the highlights now by taking the highlight slider and pulling that to the left. The other slider that people like to use is the vibrance slider. So we're going to drag that to the right to add a little bit more vibrance to the image. Doesn't need a lot. It's a pretty vibrant image as it is. And I might just take the overall exposure and brighten it up just a little bit. The other thing that is popular with people is lens corrections, which I normally do with just about every image. And so we're going to click the little lens corrections icon here, and we're simply going to click on Enable Profile Corrections, and you can see what happens as I click it on and off. The first thing it's doing is removing the vignetting, or that dark area around the outside of the frame. And it's also correcting some of the distortion that is inherent in most lenses. Also click to remove chromatic aberration. And the other thing is that we shot this at an ISO of 320. And really anything above the ISO 200 or 250, you will start to get some noise. And so I'm going to click on Detail, and I'm going to zoom in, grab the little hand here, and move this around. And you can see that the image, and particularly in the area where we recovered some of the shadows, you can see it's a little bit noisy. So I'm just going to take the noise reduction here, the luminance slider, and I'm going to slide it over just a little bit to about 18%, 19%. And the reason is because, remember, noise reduction happens at the expense of detail. So what would happen if you took that all the way over here? You could see what would happen. And what happened was, if you notice from the image, it's kind of like very blurry now. If you notice down here in the leaves, now let's bring it back and watch what happens. There might be a slight delay between when I click and when you notice the effect, but watch in here. See how that got much sharper? So we're just going to do a minor amount of noise reduction there. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to click to open the image. And it's just this simple, just these few adjustments in Photoshop, and you can process probably 50 to 75% of your images and improve them greatly without having to get into all of the various super advanced options in Photoshop. So once we're done doing this, we're going to go ahead and click down here to open the image. And what that's going to do is it's going to take it from the Adobe Camera Raw console to the full version, opening it in the full version of Photoshop. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layers palette and any palettes that are open over here for you. And that's going to be something that we can address at another time. But there's all these palettes over here that are open, and they're really just a pain in the butt. We want to just get them off to the side because right now we're not even going to be using any of those for the most part. So the first thing that you want to do that we talked about is to click to selectively lighten just the highlights. We're going to click the dodge tool right here. And then we're going to go up here and we're going to define the size of the dodging tool. You can make it very small. You can make it very large. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be dodging down here. So I'm going to make it about, oh, yay big. Oh, a little too much. And so we're going to select, you can select a range of highlights, midtones, and shadows. We're going to select the highlights. And the exposure is the amount that this effect will do from a lot to very little. I'm going to leave the exposure at about 17%. But you can adjust that if it's too much or too little. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to dodge just the highlights to bring out these highlights in the reeds. Now, I just did that. So what you can do is if you want to see the difference, you can go up under the edit menu and click undo the dodge tool. But the best way is to do Control Z. I think it's Control Z on the PC and it's Command Z on the Mac, which I'm using right now. So I'm going to go Command Z off, on. Notice how you can see the difference. And it's one of my favorite little simple things in Photoshop. Just click that on and off so you can see. So I like that. And now if you recall, you have to be very careful about detailed things like these reeds in the foreground, because if you're not careful, you can, well, that wasn't a good example. You can, we go over here, you can see what happens is it lightens up not only the thing that you want to lighten up in the foreground, but it'll oftentimes lighten up stuff in the background that you might not want to have lightened up. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of burning down there, and you can see the difference. Command Z or Control Z. I'm going to go over here, lighten these up a little bit with the dodge tool, dodging just the highlights, and maybe a little bit over here. I love that foreground detail, and that's why the dodging tool is one of my favorite things. Now, excuse me, I think maybe I want to darken down just the top of the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the dodging tool, and I'm going to select the burning tool, which will selectively darken parts of the image. So I'm going to make the burn tool a little bit smaller. Ooh, not that small. This is really touchy, this tool. And I'm going to burn just the shadows. And I'm going to just drag along here to just darken, basically give a kind of a vignette. Oop, didn't like that. In fact, I'm going to step back 2 steps and I'm going to start over again. I'm going to get a little bigger. Ooh. I'm going to drag this across and darken down the sky. I like doing that sometimes to kind of move your eye down into the frame. And same thing if the foreground, sometimes I'll darken that down, just the immediate foreground, to bring your eye up into the center of the frame. So there we go. Now, if you recall, once you're done, this is a raw file. So what we're going to do is say save as, and we can save it as a TIFF file, or if you want to save the original high quality file, you can save that as a TIFF, or you could save it as a Photoshop file, which is Photoshop's native format. That's a .psd file. But what I think I'm going to do is just save it as a TIFF. I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to just select the default selections here, no image compression, and so forth, and click OK. And it's working away. If you see down here, it says saving 55%. It's saving it to the thumb drive. I don't know why it's taking so long, but it is. I don't know, maybe the thumb drive is, oh, there it is. Okay, so now that that's saved, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the image size, and I'm going to save a smaller copy because I might want to email this to some friends, and I might want to post it on Facebook and social media, and I don't want to have a 100 megabyte file, this huge file, trying to email it to people and whatnot. So I'm going to reduce the resolution of this file. And right now, my Nikon D800, at 36 megapixel, the pixel dimensions are 7360 by 4912. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the width and I'm just going to save it. I'm going to do 1500. So I'm going to reduce the size of this file quite a bit. And if you notice, it also proportionally changed the height of the file as well. So you don't have to worry about that, because you have this little chain link graphic here that is basically constraining the aspect ratio of the original picture, so that it won't come out looking really screwed up if you just change one of the dimensions. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. We're saving it as a 1500 by 1001 file pixels, and that's at 50%. So I'm going to double click on the I'm going to single click on the magnifying glass, and I'm going to bring it up to, now that's 100% on my Macintosh screen. I'm going to bring it up to 200%. I'm going to save as, and this time I'm going to save it as a JPEG. So I'm going to come down here on the Mac, and now if you're on the PC, it's going to look a little bit different, this dialog box, but I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to save it as dash edited, because that's my little way that I know that I've edited files, and it helps me remember things. It's just kind of something that I've been doing for a long time. And so I'm going to go ahead and save, and now a little dialog box is going to come up and ask me how much compression, or basically how much image compression do I want. With a maximum quality of 12, with the slider all the way over to the right, you're getting the highest quality JPEG file with the least amount of compression. It doesn't make a huge difference when your image is at this size, relatively small, because we're only talking about right now a 1.3 megabyte image. But you really can't tell the difference between this and if we went down to a 10, which is still high quality, but it brings the image size down to 587K. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say OK, and it's going to save it. And now if I go back to here and I look, remember this is a 108 megabyte file when I saved it as a TIFF file. The original RAW file is only 31 megabytes, and the JPEG is 1/2 of a megabyte. It's half a megabyte, but it's still very nice quality. It's great for uploading to social media, emailing to your friends, or whatever. And so that is it. If you have any questions regarding anything, please let me know, and I will try to respond by making a video to answer your question. Because I figured out how to do this on the Macintosh. I've got an external microphone, so hopefully the audio is good quality as well. And we will see you on Wednesday night.